make sure you take time for people and be a connector of people. So if you're an entrepreneur of any sort, um, connect with people and connect people.
Hey, welcome to the Culture-neer podcast. I'm your host today, Terry Gwaltney, and man, I'm excited to welcome Doug Cole from Because Coffee to the Culture-neer podcast today. Doug, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Appreciate it, man.
So this is kind of interesting. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory, and then we're going to get into Doug's backstory and kind of a little bit about, his journey and how he started in his field and so on and so forth. But recently, my wife and I were on a trip. We were in northern Georgia, and I seen a coffee shop. It was over the weekend, and it was because the name of it was Because Coffee, and that caught my attention, that there may be something a little bit more behind that name. And so as we were about to leave town, it was on a Sunday, went up the door to get coffee, and it was locked. And so wow, there's people in there, but they're locked. So we seen on the door, they were closed. We got about 10 foot in the parking lot, and the door swung open, and this lady, full of joy, yelled at us and said, "Hey, if you guys are looking for coffee, come on in. We're closed, but we don't want to turn anybody away." And so that was kind of our introduction to Doug, and I just kind of kept my mouth still and listened, which is rare for me. I didn't tell Doug I didn't tell him we had a podcast. I didn't tell him some of the things that we were passionate about. I just listened. I was intrigued. And on top of all that, they were about to have a church service inside this coffee shop. So, the story plot just continued to thicken. So, that's how I met Doug. He told me a little bit of his story. Again, I was intrigued by it. He sent me out with a bag of his coffee, which was great, by the way. If you get a chance to order some Because Coffee, I'd encourage you to do that. But yeah, that's how we ended up here today. And so I don't believe in coincidences or, accidents. I really think that was more of an appointment. And I'm playing out and walking this trail to see why and where that ends. So that's how I met Doug.
Yep.
Doug, talk to us a little bit about just your journey, how you ended up at Because Coffee, and yeah, let's just get to know you a little better.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, man. So I started roasting coffee back as a little bit of a side hustle. I was working for a church up in Ohio and got into coffee as a hobby. I think my earliest recording journal entries of it were back in about 2011, 2010, and got into it as a hobby. And it allowed me to connect with some people. I'd take some college students over and encourage them, or meet a friend for Bible study and talk, and hang out and get a cup of coffee. And it was specialty grade coffee that I fell in love with from Metropolis Coffee Roasters out of Edgewater, Chicago, and tasted that at a little street fair. And I was like, wow, what is this? And so I found another cafe near me, and that the only cafe around that served that coffee, and that's where I got hooked. And I was working with a like more of a Christian college at that point. Moved over to Ohio, started working with the church, and needed a little side hustle. My side hustle back in the Indiana where I was before was a cleaning business. So I was like, let me try something different. So I roasted coffee, and got a little popcorn popper, and I could roast about a quarter pound of coffee at a time in my popcorn popper just to try it out. And it was better than what I could get at the store. So I said, all right, I'm going to buy a roaster. And I bought a 3-pound roaster and started Acoustic Coffee Roasters. I guess technically I started Simple City Coffee Roasters. And then a little bit into it realized I wanted to change the name. So changed it to Acoustic Coffee Roasters. And I play guitar. My wife plays piano. And the idea behind it was, unplug and play loudest for those around you. And got doing that and enjoyed it, had a blast, and was trying to doing it just me, my wife, my family. And I had some friends down in Georgia who had a nonprofit. Eddie, my business partner, um, I had a couple connections with him. One was from some ministry work in Indiana. And then the other one was where when I started roasting, I actually put my roaster in his aunt's cafe out in Newton Falls, Ohio. We just had this, oddly enough, I just happened to be out there. I got to know his parents in Ohio. That's where he was from. So he reached out and said, Doug, I love the coffee. And I've got this nonprofit. I said, yeah, I know, CMI. He said, I want to try to start this coffee shop and have it help to benefit the nonprofit. And so I was familiar with CMI. It's Christian Media International, and the core driving purpose of CMI is to cover the globe, the 100 major languages that are spoken in the world with gospel-focused messaging. So most of that is going out on TV, satellite TV. Some of it's going over the internet, depending on the availability. And so that was, I think, CMI is 8 years old now, and it was about 3 years old at that point. And so it sounded great. So we put our house up for sale, sold it, and moved. Acoustic coffee roasters is no more. We're not doing anything with that. Loved everything in Ohio, but the opportunity to do this was great. So we opened up Because Coffee in 2019, moved down here in 2018. So in May, we'll be about 5 years old. Started our roastery, and I didn't know anything about the food industry. So we didn't go after really much of a cafe. I'd never worked even at McDonald's before. It was, my first job was construction. I was busting my knuckles with a bunch of grown men, and, did a fair amount of that, and growing up, and then church work, and always had some side hustles. Never did food, but I knew how to roast coffee. And so we went at it from that angle, started growing our roastery, and then fast forward to about a year and a half ago, we had the opportunity to put another coffee shop in another location in the town just south of us. And so we didn't want to just copy and paste Because Coffee. We got a real local type of feel there. And so we said, let's come up with another idea. And when you think you're going to start a second brand, you think, okay, it'll be twice as much work, and it's not. It's about 5 times as much work to have 2 different brands going. So anyways, but it's been great. And the goal was to, at the roastery, it's a fun, kind of quirky, goofy, kind of just homespun feel. Just kind of like, I wear jeans and a t-shirt every day. That's what our shop feels like. The new place is a lot more elevated, and we decided we wanted to offer our coffee and put it on display in a more elevated manner from a menu perspective. And so it's a completely different feel. And so we started Myth and Legend, and Myth and Legend is in the Cumming City Center. And so we're starting some more of the Myth and Legend cafes, coffee houses is what we call them. So we've got another one in Johns Creek, and we're working on one now actually out of state. I'll be driving there, leaving early tomorrow morning to go down and check on the progress. So that's where we are.
Wow. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So I thought it was interesting as I just sat and listened to you talk. Mm-hmm. You kept referring to side hustles, but there obviously was an entrepreneurial side of you early on. You didn't say you was necessarily going out looking for a job. You're going out and creating a job. So I'm curious, you had the side hustle. It doesn't sound like you ever had any experience roasting coffee. You were self-taught. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You and your popcorn maker?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, humble beginnings. That's awesome. I love those kind of stories.
Yep.
So you started as a side hustle. You were a coffee aficionado, I guess.
Yeah.
So your passion for something turned into a business. And it sounds like without putting words in your mouth where we're going here, that it was as much about purpose as it was about profit. Is that fair?
Yeah, and if anything, I'm probably guilty of being more purpose-driven than profit-driven. My wife, lovingly tells me I'm not a very good businessman. So,
yeah. There's something about purpose over profit and mission over margin. You definitely have to keep them both in
You
check.
do.
But
Otherwise, you won't be able to drive that
so
purpose.
yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like there was a ministry journey there. You mentioned you were working. Was you working for a church? Was you volunteering at a church? What'd that look like?
All the above. um,
All the
you know
above.
how it is.
Okay.
You're getting your paycheck. There's also plenty of volunteering there. And I learned a lot. So I worked with a more on the Christian education side with the college and seminary, and then worked with a church in Ohio, and that was more just like on the actual church side. So more the administrative and helping to run the operations of the church. But the part that I always loved, it was my driving factor for trying to create processes or trying to help things run better, more smoothly, was the fact that God gave us a group of people to take care of, and they're volunteering their time, they're helping, they're serving, and if they wanted to teach kids, they needed to show up and worry about teaching kids, not worry about curriculum and not worry about snacks and not worry about setup and not worry. So that was my driving. It wasn't because I was trying to be an organizational geek. I was a people geek, and love people, and I love God and love people. And if people can see that in my life, then I consider that to be a success.
So interesting that you left that full-time endeavor behind and changed hats to go into a for-profit business. I want you to speak to that, because I think sometimes, on this show, if we're interviewing people, we're talking obviously to business owners. Culture is a big deal. It's obviously the name of the show. So when we're not interviewing guests, we're talking about the importance of, just a healthy culture.
Yeah.
But the fact that you are in a business space for profit, you had dedicated a lot of your life and your training to help people. You said you went to seminary.
Yep.
So you obviously feel like you're still carrying that out. You're just doing it in a different place. Talk to the audience about that a little bit. What's that?
Yeah.
Is that true? And two, how does that make you feel? Because I think sometimes, you run into people that feel like they have a call on their life or an assignment, and they're always trying to escape, seems like, a business world so they can go do something that's maybe more impactful or significant. You reversed the roles and left that, and you obviously feel like you're making a significant impact. So I'd love to hear about that. That was probably the most intriguing part of your story.
Yeah. There are a couple of factors involved, but one, ironically enough, I never felt that it was calling on my life to lead a church as like the pastor. I was very happy and content to be in a support role. But the part that I was doing, I had a lot of administrative responsibilities in church, but the part that I loved the most was leading some Bible studies, discipling people, the adult Sunday school class and small group that I was leading, the relationships and the people that I was getting to pour into. That wasn't officially part of my job description. And I was essentially, and when I say that, doing it for free, I mean, that just, I'll explain that. So that was the part that I was just doing for free. It wasn't part of my job description. I just wanted to do it, and it was part of, who God has created me to be. And I think part of God's calling on all of us. And I thought, well, somebody else can do this administrative part and probably do a better job at it. I want to try to take care of my family a little bit more right now, and have the opportunity to do that. I'm always going to invest in people. I'm always going to lead some Bible studies or disciple. And the part that I am doing for free, I'll always do for free. That has not changed. And so then I get to pursue coffee and do that as a business. And now I just left meeting with one of our young guys, and we got to have, it's essentially, discipling some of our team. I'm trying to figure out how to do that and open shops and expand a roasting side and try to do all that at the same time, and be true and present and for my family as a father and a husband. It's a lot to, that's a lot to juggle. So without rambling too much, how to make that transition. So the part that I was always doing for free is the part that I always loved and I always would do for free. It wasn't on the clock. It's still not on the clock. Moved down here to Georgia, and we got involved with the church. Good place, good people. I love them, and they're serving the Lord and meeting needs here in North Georgia. We had the opportunity, it seemed like, to start something up with a friend of mine who's one of my business partners. I knew him from Ohio. He had moved down here as well, and so he said, Doug, I'd really like to start a church. And I said, well, we have our coffee shop. We're closed on Sunday. Why don't we do it there? So we did. And that's what you walked in on that day. And that's been 3 years since we started that. Everybody who comes to church with us we've met through the coffee shop. We've not put a Facebook page together, a website, a billboard, a piece of paper, nothing. It's just been people. Honestly, I mean, I've got a lot on my plate, and I know I'm learning my humanity and my capacity as a human. And this is what we can do right now. And we're meeting the needs that God's put in front of us. And, hopefully he'll enable us, as he sees fit to do more. But Tim, about a year into almost basically a year into it, it's like, oh, Doug, we're moving back to Ohio. So remember when I said that I didn't feel that it was my calling to lead the congregation or lead a group of believers or an assembly. They call me pastor now. So, and that's what we get to do. And I love doing it. We don't have a big program. The more programs you get going and organizing, the less time you have for people. And so I just tell them, it's going to be simple right now. If anybody else wants to develop certain programs, and God bless you. Good. I only have the bandwidth and capacity to focus on people right now. So I'm going to spend time studying and preparing and teaching, and we'll have some Bible studies outside of this. We'll have some time with worship, and we'll fellowship. So that's what we're doing together.
So you're a serial entrepreneur, a barista, a coffee roaster, and a pastor, and a dad,
yes,
and a husband.
I can't leave those out. Those are so important to me.
And not in that order.
No.
So, Doug, I'm curious. Can you recall like a childhood memory that gave you a sneak peek into maybe what you're doing today?
No, I mean, for coffee, no, that was never even on my radar. No, I mean, I always,
more about helping people.
Yeah, as a kid, I mean, I always said I wanted, my dad's pastor, and I wanted to work with church. And so that was always a desire of mine. And I remember just wanting to take care of people. So it didn't necessarily have a shape to it. So I'm not one of those people.
Well, I mean, it's still a clue to what you're doing today. I think when we look back, most people struggle with, and why am I here? What's my purpose?
Yeah.
There has to be something more than this, even if they, achieve some kind of level of success. And I think we just look back in our history, it's the greatest indicator of our destiny. And there's just a lot of clues there if we turn around and kind of pay attention. Anyway, hindsight's 20/20.
A pivotal moment. I can't say necessarily pivotal moment. I will say I think it's a culmination of how I was raised. My parents are, I don't have these big wow factors in my life growing up. I have parents who were there. I had, a dad who I didn't realize he was working an extra job to pay the bills as he was pastoring, because he was pastoring. He was working while I was at school, and he was out in the yard throwing a baseball with us and going to our games, or taking us fishing, So taking care of people. My mom. I remember going and, cleaning condos in Ocean City with her. She paid me $5 to go, $5 or $10 to go clean some condos, or digging some footers with my dad on a construction site, visiting people for church. So I would say it's a culmination of those things. We moved around a good little bit. I would say a defining moment that I remember that helped me stay on track was when my dad was working as a director of men in an inner city mission in Richmond, Virginia, um, and talking to the guys, and they said, "Doug, don't do it the way I did it." And
Mm.
they're good men, like seriously good men who had made some poor choices, and it had damaged their lives long term. Um, it didn't mean that they needed to be thrown away. They could still be of service and good, to humankind and to their maker. Um, but it looked different than what it could have, and I remember
And
that.
they were willing to share their experience. A lot of times we talk about, experiences really learning from our own mistakes, but wisdom is learning from the mistakes of others. And it really sounds like they were trying to pass on some wisdom.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember those, Carrington, Julius, those guys would just kind of pull us in. They're back there cooking the fried chicken, best fried chicken I ever had in my life. Um, Julius knew what's up, and he just pulled me aside and say, "Hey, Doug, here's a little something extra." And he'd look at me, and as he'd say something like that, he'd start to tear up a little bit. It's like, man, God's gonna do something special with you. Don't make those choices that I did. So that's, and again, that came around seeing what my parents, you know they put us in those situations. Those are good situations to be in. So,
Yeah. What would you say your favorite childhood memory is?
hmm, um, uh, climbing trees. Yeah, yeah. I remember distinctly sitting in a tree at about 10 or 11 years old, thinking, "I'm never going to grow out of climbing trees," and I haven't. So, um, climbing trees, I liked it. I would climb trees. We build forts. We put beds in trees, swings. We fell out of trees. Um, so even, to this day, we got about a 40-foot tall rope swing in our backyard. So for my kids. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's some of the highlights of my childhood, building forts and tree houses everywhere. So,
yeah, it was
talk to us
great.
about you. Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned a while ago you're married, you have a couple kids, you're a dad. How did you meet your spouse?
I met her at college. So I was, went for school, I've got a degree in, pastoral theology. My wife went for secondary education, and wasn't really looking to teach. She was looking for somebody like me. So, um, yeah, she found him. Um, and so we met at college through some student ministry. And I waited about a year and a half to ask her out. And because I figured she seemed like the type of girl that I'd want to keep my eye on. So it's like, yeah, I'll go on a couple dates here or there, and meet some other people. But about a year and a half into college, I asked her out, and I was halfway through my sophomore year, and we got married about 2 weeks after we graduated. And this June, it'll be 17 years for us.
Wow. Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you, thank you.
And how many kids?
We got two. We got our daughter. She's our oldest, 14. Our boy Owen, he's 10, and they're both really special in very different ways. They're goofy as heck, man. I love them.
So is the quiver full? Have you tapped out, or is this ever expanding?
No, no, I think we're good. Everybody has their capacity. Everybody has a different size quiver, and well, our quiver just ain't that big. So, um, we're good.
That's awesome. So tell me the three most influential people in your life you think that's impacted, or how they've impacted you. Maybe I know it's a big question, but I'd love to hear the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. My parents, if I can tag team them together, have both had, because they've had a singular impact on me, both different ways. Um, both my personality traits, how I was raised, all those things. So, my dad's an incredibly hard worker, um, one of the smartest, most naturally intelligent people that I've ever met in my life. My mom she's a servant, equally hard worker, very patient and easygoing by nature. My dad's very competitive. So they've had a big impact on me. And in ways that I've seen and ways that I haven't seen. I know that they both prayed a lot for me and my two brothers throughout the years. And so there are always those ways where I look back and say, I had an opportunity to do something really stupid. Why didn't I do that? I don't know. I wasn't smart enough to make the right decision. I think it had something to do with my parents' prayers. Um,
Mm.
so my parents, and then my wife is a big influence on me, honestly. My wife has, I like to bounce ideas off of her. I like to run at a pace that, and I just like to go. And sometimes I don't realize when my motor's out of gas. Um, and my family can't run at the same speed that I personally can just take. Um, so she helps. She's like, on a bus, you've got a governor. It doesn't keep it keeps your bus from going past 55 or 60 miles an hour, which is incredibly frustrating for me because when I used to drive a bus, I wanted to go fast. But you shouldn't be going fast in a bus. And so she helps regulate me with some really good insight. So I'm extremely grateful for that. It's helped me. I think it's helped me with the long term. They always say that life is it's a marathon, not a sprint, and she's helping me stay in the marathon. Um,
Mm.
and then I've got several. I've got my brother. Both my brothers are a big influence on me. I'll call them and bounce ideas, different perspectives. And then I've got a couple of really dear friends. Then oddly enough, there's an influence. I don't know the guy, but I've read uh, read writings, listened to lots of music, watched lots of interviews, and it might sound like a goofy influence, but there's a singer songwriter by the name of John Foreman who's actually had a pretty profound influence on me through just what he's put out there and a lot of ways of thinking that just resonate with me. So that's what I've got.
Mm. That's awesome. I think it's so important because you're describing a pace that most entrepreneurs naturally are set at, which is why they kind of set out on their own. They're a pioneer. They don't necessarily need motivation outside for them to get up every day. They're just motivated by
Hmm.
what they do, and they're kind of on a mission. And I think having a
Hmm.
support system, people around, I think probably obviously every one of those relationships were unique and had a unique influence. But I know personally as well the benefit, man, of having a trusted advisor that lives under the same roof, sleeps in my same bed. Um, that helps you stay on track for the things that are really important because it's super easy when you agree to kind of get your eye off the ball a little bit and you find yourself convincing yourself you're chasing something for the benefit maybe of others, and you find you're chasing it so hard sometimes it's at the expense of others, and you kind of have to do a
Yeah.
reset. And it sounds like your
Yep.
wife kind of
Very
helps you
easy.
stay on balance.
Yeah, she's a big help there, honestly. Really. I feel like I'd probably run people into the ground, and not in an intense way. It's like, hey, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's go everywhere, do everything, always be there for everybody, and then realize, wow, there's my family's not with me anymore, and
Yeah.
that'd be a crime.
So talk to us about, is there significant failure maybe that you've experienced and the most important lesson you learned from it?
um, it's good, a significant. I don't.
I know that was thought
I
provoking.
will.
You kind of have,
It is. Well, but like a significant. I mean, I can think of lots of failures in my life. A significant one. Um, I'll be honest with you. But I know you would probably maybe most entrepreneurs and people who are in business would identify themselves as natural risk takers. I'm not. So I try not to risk too much. Um, that's why I like to go into business with other people. There's some strength in numbers there. Um, Biggest failure. Honestly, it's several instances of losing my temper. Um,
mm,
and they all kind of rooted in the same cause. Um, the same cause was I was coming to the defense of other people. Um, and that's noble and just and honorable, yes. But it's the demeanor, it's how you come to their defense. that can either drive the point home or can completely undermine your cause. So in these instances, I ripped the face off of three different people. Um, Good, well-intentioned. Um, One of them was, yeah, there were two of them were, I guess you would say, in those, in one way, shape, or form, even in an authoritative position in my life. Um, and it was what it was. The other one was not. Um, and I was standing up for some people, doing what I thought was right.
Mm.
And but I did not handle it the right way. And so then all of a sudden, the cause that you're standing up for is completely undermined, and I become, my anger, my temper, my lack of self-control becomes the issue, and then what you stood up for isn't even accomplished. So um, I've learned that um, I should not champion a cause in a way that undermines the cause.
Yeah, that's a valuable lesson and well spoken. Um, we our organization has what we call a strategic meeting. It's a retreat for 2 days. We do it every quarter. It happens to be tomorrow, actually, when we do this quarter's.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing some training, just some leadership development training while we're away, as well as our goal setting. And a lot of it's going to have to
Hmm.
do around the subject of emotions. And I was talking to
Oh.
a guy that was going to be there, and he had shared with me a story early on in his journey before I ever met him, where he got passed over for a promotion, and he was in a guy's office just throwing chairs. I mean, that kind of
Ooh.
outburst.
Wow.
And
Bobby Knight. Oh.
yeah, oh Bobby Knight, and we were having the discussion, and he said, when I told him the subject, he said, "Yeah, you're gonna be talking about me, huh?" And I said, "Well, I said your story came up when I thought we could all benefit from the subject, but I said, I said,
Oh.
one of the things that's interesting is I think now where you're at in your journey, you would
Mhm.
view that situation from the other side of the desk."
Yeah.
And I said, from where you were at and how you were raised and what got you to that point, you were trying to express, how disappointed you was, obviously in that situation that you had been passed over and how stupid a decision that was. Now I think you would step on the other side of the desk and you would sit down and think, that guy's thinking, man, did I ever make the right decision to pass this guy over?
Yeah.
Would I want that guy using that type of influence, in a position of leadership if he couldn't keep his emotions in check? And he
Yeah.
was agreeing, but my point is to your point, if you can't keep your emotions in check, because part of that is your emotions make you very passionate,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about that too in our meeting. That's the positive side. The negative side is, yes, if you don't keep it in check, it can undermine your entire cause, and you just
Hmm.
lose credibility.
Yeah.
So that was a powerful lesson.
Yeah.
So, greatest lesson your parents ever taught you? What comes to mind? I'm
Mm.
sure that's hard to boil it down to one.
It is. Well, one of them comes through just our life experiences, and it's flexibility, the ability to be comfortable in your own skin. There you go. That parlays into it. So, um, the greatest lesson is that again they modeled it. I don't remember a conversation. It's just something that they modeled. They were consistent, and they weren't fake. My parents weren't fake. They are who they are. Um, I never felt like my parents were being hypocrites. Now maybe they were at some points. They're human, but I didn't feel like they were being hypocrites. Even as a dumb, angsty 15, 16-year-old boy trying to flex his muscles, I didn't feel like my parents were being hypocrites. I get frustrated sometimes, just what you do when you're growing up. But never felt like they were hypocrites. I felt like they were being genuine, and I felt like I observed them um, give me some trust. As I earned trust, I looked at my mom one day and said, "Mom, I could be out screwing around in my car, driving my '74 Nova, being really stupid and doing all kinds of whatever." And she looked at me. "You're not, are you?" It's like, "No, but I could be. You trust me pretty well." Um, but they allowed me to earn trust. They allowed me to make some choices. Like a teenager, I would wear some goofy clothes, say some goofy things. Um, but they allowed me some freedom to do that within reason. Um, and just because my dad wouldn't have grown a goatee with twists in it, you know, he didn't slam me down for that. Um, so that was a good lesson, and that flexibility that came along with that. From we moved quite a bit, um, but somehow we were able to move and make some transitions smoothly. I learned a lot of flexibility through that. So those two things right there.
How do you
I
think that
hopefully that
is?
made sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, how do you think that has helped shaped you as a dad, as well as helped shaped you leading people as an entrepreneur?
Um, well, I value integrity. So the word integrity means whole or complete. A lot of people associate it with honesty, and while that's a facet of integrity, um, and honesty does not define integrity. That's only a part of it. Integrity means, it has its root in words like integer, whole, or complete. So if you turn a rock around or you turn over a diamond, you'll see the same flaw. It doesn't mean it doesn't have flaws, but you'll see the same flaw. You'll see a natural character all the way around. You turn it around and you'll see whatever is good, whatever is imperfect about it. It's consistent. Doesn't matter what shape or what facet you look at. It's a consistency. That's integrity. And so there's that wholeness or completeness in there. It's like an integer, a whole number. Um, and so I value that. I don't strive to be perfect, but I do strive to be um, complete, mature, as the scripture would say. Perfect is what scripture, talks about. But I strive not for perfection, but like that completeness, integrity. So if you see my flaw here, you're going to see it there. My wife, fortunately, she said, I see the same flaws at home that I see out in public. Like, oh, okay, good. I'm good there.
Yeah, well, at
Um,
least you're not hiding it.
right. And so but I don't want to be a one person out public, one person with our team, and then one person with my family, and one person at church. I don't want that. I want, if the Lord's going to work in my life, if He's going to produce fruit in my life, I want Him to produce it consistently in these areas. If I'm blocking it off in this area, it's also going to be blocked off at home. Like I need it. I want those channels being free flowing. So that is it. And then also flexibility. Flexibility is a strength of mine, but it's also a detriment of mine. So there's a good side and a bad side to that.
What would you say your definition, if you had to define the word culture, as it relates to, an organization, what would be your definition?
Your spirit, the spirit. What is the lifeblood of that organization? What character does it have? What's its nature? How do you guys operate? It's not necessarily the X's and O's and the what you're doing and what you're not doing. Those are all come out of your culture. Um, so um, yeah, that would be my definition of character or of culture. Sorry.
So if you're going to give a piece of advice, you're going to share this with someone who's about to start out on their entrepreneurial journey, what would that be?
One piece of advice. I I like to. You're going to need people. You can't do it on your own. Some people are maybe are born what they call solopreneurs. Um, I'm not one, so I can't necessarily speak to that. Um, so from maybe the people like me, or maybe people who need to hear that, don't be afraid to go at it with some people. God's going to bring you some people in your life. Take Make sure you take time for people and be a connector of people. So if you're an entrepreneur of any sort, um, connect with people, and connect people. So
Hmm.
it may not make you a dime to refer a local bit. If you're running a pressure washing business and you tell somebody, man, this guy's got the best pizza in town. You need to go see my buddy while you're here in town. Doesn't make you any money to connect him. Or if you have a supplier, you're and you connect these two people and you don't make any money off of it. Um, may not make any money off of it, but you help somebody, and you don't know how in the world that's going to come back to help you. That may not have to be your motivation, but man, it goes a long ways. So that's my piece of
Yeah.
advice there.
Is there an aha moment, like the biggest aha moment you had in your career? What would you say that was?
Let me see here. Um, yeah, lately. Yeah, yeah. Honestly, it's been just recently. I have come to terms, or I've become much more distinctly aware of my humanity. I'm human, and I don't mean that in a sense of hubris. I have really, honestly, I enjoy life. I enjoy living. I enjoy working. I I just like to do stuff, man. I like to be busy about much, and during that, you don't always realize your limits, and until you start to see, I didn't even start to see the cracks, but it's when stuff starts trickling through. Okay, fine, whatever. Hey, maybe you spilled a little bit. No, there's stuff, something's gushing out now. Oh no, stink. you know so I'm becoming more aware of my humanity, and I can only accomplish what I can accomplish in a day, and what I can't, fine. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Maybe I can do some things better, but I didn't. So it's the end of the day. I'm going to sleep. And along with that comes where I've been teaching through and preaching through John, and I've been in there for several months now, and wrapped up John chapter 15 a couple weeks ago, and abide in you are the vine, I'm the branches, and it talks a lot about abiding in me, and then the gift of the person of the Holy Spirit when Christ leaves, when he left, and um, it's not my job to produce. I'm called to abide. I simply abide, and fruit is produced through me, but it's not my fruit. So whatever it is that I'm called to do in this life, that I've been given or tasked to do, it's not mine to make happen. So I've got to trust God with that. So trusting means abiding. I'm gonna abide in Him, and I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna try to put good stuff into my life, and be honest and full of integrity, and get up in the morning and be about my Father's business. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I'm not called to produce anything. I'm called to abide, and so that takes it takes trust, but it also relieves stress, and it relieves pressure, because
Mm.
He's supposed to produce, and He'll produce what He wants to produce. So um, that's been an aha moment lately. It hasn't made me work less, but it's made me realize that you know people they've been born, they've been being born, they've been dying, they've been getting sick, they've been working, they've been doing things, living on this earth, for thousands of years now, and I'm no different than any of them. God's used them in different ways, and He's done things, and He'll get stuff done how He wants to. So that's been my big
Mm.
aha moment over the past several months.
Wow. What would you say is the most important tool you have in your business toolbox?
Oh, connections. Honestly, it's my connections with people. It's been the vendors. Man, people do you don't realize how important your vendors or business partners. When I say business partners, it may not be somebody who's in business they're not in your articles of incorporation. They're not in the legal binding documents. It's, like I just met with one today. She lives up in Virginia, but she's down here helping somebody set up their POS system. And our POS partner is, to me, a huge um, part of our business. That I made sure I aligned myself with a company that shares not only um, it shares my values. It shows in their product, and it shows in how they treat me. Um,
Mm.
so one of the biggest toolboxes or tools in my toolbox are the um, the people, the companies, the resources, the vendors, whatever you want to call it, that I get to work with and partner with. So from a business
Strategic
standpoint, and then
partnerships.
you can't ever. Yes, yeah. Again, when I had my cleaning business, it was that back then. It was my cleaning supply equipment person. It wasn't a big fancy alignment. She was just a freaking rock star. She knew what I needed, and she helped me get it. And she made my
Mm.
business so much better. She was just a salesperson. Honestly, if you want to put it at a real base level, she was a salesperson, but she helped me immensely. Um,
Mm.
so that's a huge toolbox, a tool in my toolbox. And the other one is just your team. You can't ever. Doesn't matter who it is, and I had a wake up call about that just recently, and it made me stop and go talk to some of our young 18-year-old baristas and chat with them, ask them some questions, and tell them I loved them and pray for them before I left behind the bar. And I prayed with them for a moment, just stop what we were doing. There's nobody in line. Say, hey guys, look, I want to pray for you. Do you mind if I do that? No. So, yeah, your connections, your strategic alignments. If you want to be super fancy about it, I'm sorry, I'm not a real fancy guy. Um, and then your team. You've got to pay attention to your team.
So we're going to jump into our four faves here. So what's the favorite
Hmm.
part of your morning routine?
I like my quiet time. I do. I get up in the morning, and most every morning I'll get up and I go through about. I don't go to the gym. I know I'm skinny and all, but I don't go to the gym. But I do spend about 20 or 30 minutes stretching. I do some. I have a pretty. I'm happy with my stretching routine. One day I'll get back to the gym, but right now I get up, do all these stretches, and feeling good. I drink my bone broth. So I've got this bone broth concoction that I drink. I don't drink my coffee till about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Um, then I'll sit down and I'll spend some time in scripture, praying, and then from there it's not predictable. Sometimes I get right into computer work. Sometimes I'm out seeing people or delivering coffee. But my favorite part in the morning, starting my day, is that chunk in the morning. Anywhere from an hour to 2 hours in the morning, um, that I have to do that. It's nice and quiet.
What's your favorite way to unwind at the end of the day?
Hang out with my family. Sometimes just do some work around the house. I love to play guitar. I'm not a fancy musician, but I just love it. So play some guitar, and now my son is starting to get a little bit more into some of that. So we were jamming the other day. I'm playing guitar, and he's playing ukulele or the cajon. Um, so that type of stuff. And some honestly, sit back, watch a dumb TV show. Like I've got the kids on Alf. Do you remember Alf?
Yeah,
Yeah, from the
I
'80s,
do.
Alien life form. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've got the kids liking the stuff that I like. So that's a fun little way. Just something, a lighthearted, clean, decent show. It just make us laugh. So something like that too. And then
You have
reading.
an all-time.
I don't read as much
Yeah.
as I should, but
Well, that kind of goes into my next question. Do you have an all-time favorite book that stands out to you?
yeah. So one for different reasons. One is a book called Never Say No. And it's a book on parenting. Um, Great, fantastic book. Can't say enough about it. And then the Bible. That's like the book. Um, and then from a non or a fiction standpoint, I really enjoyed reading the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. Underrated.
Okay. This one's a little bit harder.
Okay.
Favorite magical moment you'll never forget. You got to boil that down to one. What would it be?
Oh, a honestly, just Saturday we went out to um, Tallulah Gorge, and great place, by the way. If you're ever driving through here, you got to stop there. Um, it's incredible. So we went out there, spent the day, um, stopped at a couple places for ice cream and then coffee, and got a bite to eat and check out some other places, and just had an awesome day. And then afterwards, my wife and I were talking. And she mentioned a conversation she had with her daughter, and where my daughter like showed some serious wisdom and maturity, um, about something, and that's the freshest memory I've got in my mind. And that's right now, I would say that day, Saturday, is my favorite so far.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So, one piece of advice you'd leave with our listeners today on how they can improve the culture of their organization, what would that be?
Um, Improve the culture. Spend time with your people. We're so busy doing and getting that new account, figuring out that new process, um, building out a new building. You've got to spend some time with some people. I did learn that was a big lesson that I learned with somebody who was both a he was a leader in a couple of capacities in my life. I'll put it that way. And like anybody else does, he's a little bit of a larger than life personality. So you get frustrated about some of those larger than life character traits. Yeah, and but the moment you got to spend, a couple hours on a project with the person or doing something, you're like, oh man, love this guy. All right, let's go. Um, and and really, the culture comes from you as a leader. You're not going to be able to push your culture if you're not around, or if you don't have people that you're pouring into who can be around those people. You may not be able to pour into all 500 of your employees, but you can pour into some leaders personally who can pour themselves into people. So if you pour into people and teach them to pour into people, um, that's what I've seen. That makes a difference. That made a difference
Yeah,
in me,
that's
and that makes a difference in my team. So you've got to do it.
that's so good. Yeah, the culture can only be as healthy as the leader. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
so you're busy. I think
Hmm.
in the business world, I think a lot of times we think we either have to choose to be successful at home, or we have to choose to be successful at business. I got to run 110% in one, and that means it's going to suffer in the other. And I don't believe that. I believe you
No.
can. I believe you can win in both places, but you also have to
Yeah.
simplify your life in order to be able to do that. So my question would be,
Right.
what are you doing to simplify your life or sharpen your focus on your vision, your goals for the future? Some of these I think come around just by
Uh,
necessity.
right. Yeah. Um, I don't have a bunch of extra hobbies right now. I don't go golfing. I don't go hunting. I don't go fishing. I don't do these things. My life consists of time with my family, time with my people at my church, and time with people in our company. So it's simplified.
Mm.
I'm not. So I don't have hobbies and things that take me away. Maybe at some point I will. I don't know. Um, and then keeping me um, trying to be honest with myself. And a lot of that comes from the best person I talk with about things like that is my wife. She helps me stay pretty honest. That was one
Mm.
of the things I noticed in her that I said, she could be a girl that I could spend my life with because I looked at her and found out that she was an honest, trustworthy person. Um, and
Mm.
that helps me out a lot. Even if I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the truth hurts, um, but it's needed.
Yeah, sometimes it's the best advice you can get. So, the name of our show, the name of the book we wrote, it's called Culture-neer. That word is a combination of the word culture and pioneer. My question
Hmm.
to you would be, what does it mean in your mind to be a culture-neer?
Yeah, somebody who's pushing forward and blazing some trails with a purpose. With this is who I am. This is the mission that I've been given. This is the passion in my heart, and You're gonna have to hack through the woods. You're gonna have to drive over some open
Mm.
fields. You're gonna have to cross some mountains and go through some rivers. Um, so, but people did it, and you look at this country, and that's how it was built. And I think those people were half crazy. I think you kind of have to be
I think it
half
helps,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, to do something
Yeah, I
like that.
definitely think
So to be,
that's
so that's what I think of when you put those two together. You're pioneering, you're leading, you're out in front, you're there, and you've got a purpose. You got a place that you're going to, and you may not know exactly where you're going. I mean, they didn't have maps, they didn't have GPS. Um, and sometimes you just figure it out
so
on the way.
true.
You ever play Oregon Trail? You know. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I think I
that's what I
do
think
a
of.
lot. So how does Doug Cole want to be remembered when his life is over here on the earth? What kind of mark do you
Yeah,
want to leave that can't be erased?
I had a friend of mine ask me. I used to meet up with him, and we talked some life and Bible study and things like that. And he asked me. He was a pretty driven individual, really successful in some areas of his life. And he said, "How do you define success?" And I said, "Matt, if other people can look at me, whether I'm alive or dead, if they can look at my life and say, Doug honestly tried to love God, and Doug tried to love people, um, I'll take that as success." And so that's all I want. I want people to at the end of my life, if they can look and say, Doug honestly tried to love God. He wasn't perfect. He was goofy, um, but he tried to love God and he tried to love me. That's it. Like you can
Hmm.
sum it up like that. Jesus said everything else hangs on that. So all the law on the prophets, they hang on that right there. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Flip the script for just a moment. If there's one question you'd like to ask me, what would that be?
Oh man, cool. Um, I, Let me see here. One question I'd like to ask you. Um, I would like to know probably eh, like it's what I've been thinking about more and more lately with myself. How do I how do I focus on all that needs to be focused on? Um, it's tough to keep a good focus and a good balance. Um, so how do I keep focused on all of these things at the same time? Keep the ball moving. I feel like so many times I'm in the middle of a football field and I've got, 10 of those big giant, those big balls that they use at camp,
Yeah.
like a summer camp. And I feel like I've got 10 of those lined up across sideline to sideline. And it's my job to run across the field, push a ball, and I have to try to get all of those across the goal line. Um, I'm just running sideline to sideline, pushing those balls back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And, but the wind's blowing them back at me. How do you get those balls across the goal line? That would be my question, metaphorically speaking, of course. Um,
Wow.
so I'm a
Grit,
visual person.
fortitude, and patience. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Grit,
I see
fortitude, and
when I read my,
patience.
yeah, okay. And that's what I
But
figured.
I think, but I think to add to that is, it sounds like we're obviously both people of faith. I think when the vertical relationship is right, then
Hmm.
it tends to make all of the other help with all the other horizontal relationships to be right. And so I think if you're
Hmm.
staring at 10 balls and you don't know where the wind's coming from, you really
Hmm.
need some outside help and you need some clarity. And that's the
Yes.
thing is I don't think there's a formula in that because there's too many variables. The seasons change.
Hmm.
I'm in an
They
empty
do.
nest season in my life. I have a lot more time to push those 10 balls, not at the expense of my
Hmm.
marriage, but I also have a whole lot more
Right.
responsibility outside of my home. So I think a self
Yep.
awareness of knowing which season that I'm in, and it's kind of like what you said a while ago that what you're learning, and your wife is kind of
Hmm.
helping you with that. You
Yeah.
realize, there's an end to what I can do, even though I have the desire. There's physical limitations to that, and
Yep.
so I think you've shared a lot of the answers. That what I would repeat today is, man, having the right people in your life, not just as a trusted advisor, but having those people that have the experience that you haven't gained yet because you haven't been there yet. Sometimes we don't even know the right
Yeah.
questions to ask because we've not been there yet. Just
Yeah.
having those people with a relationship in your life where they can speak into you, that is powerful.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. Man. Honestly, yeah, that's the one that's been going around in my head lately. And I figured if I had a chance to talk to somebody who's been doing it longer in a different capacity, and um, yeah, and you're obviously wanting to see not just yourself but other people do that. That's what you're investing in with Culture-neer. So yeah, I think that's where I would try to hitch up on for sure.
So as we get into close this out today, I'm going to go through some rapid fire. These are just kind of fun questions. This is probably definitely in your
Sure.
wheelhouse, but would you rather have a night in or a night out?
Oh, oh man, I guess out. I like to go see some music, so let's go see a concert. There we go.
Vacation in the mountains or at the beach?
I live in the mountains, so going to the beach.
2 superpowers. If you had the ability to fly or be invisible, which one would you choose?
Fly, because I'm not looking to hide from people. So
There you go. What's your 2 biggest pet peeves?
drivers other than me, most of the time. So I like to get away from all the other drivers. And then complaining. Ironically enough, like I typically don't complain much unless I'm driving. So, yeah,
If you had 1 meal to eat for the rest of your life, what would that meal be?
pizza.
You'll love this question. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
I I had somebody ask me that one time, and I said, "Well, I like to live in the eternal present. So, at some point in the future, somebody who's alive now will be in the past and will be history. So, can I answer it like that?" He allowed me to. Um,
Sure.
so I gave him that. I gave him that answer. But I would say of anybody who is right now in this present moment in history, I think George Washington would be a super cool person to have a cup of coffee with. Um, I'm reading one of his journals right
Yeah.
now, and it's just a fascinating man, really.
Yeah. Gutsy, too.
Oh yeah,
Man, Doug,
man.
I appreciate you joining the show today. This has been a
Yeah,
pleasure to get to know you a little bit better. I know it seemed like
yeah.
a coincidence that we met, but I don't think it was. And so this has kind of been a real
No.
joy for me just to really get to know you just a little bit better. So,
Yeah, it has been. I'm sorry I had to do the interview out in my truck out in the parking lot for most of that interview, man. So I'm sure it's I guess maybe it feeds right into the culturepreneur or the Culture-neer um aspect. You're talking to guys who are doing stuff and they're on the go, and you know, so
no. That's just part of it. Well, listen, remember, guys, your culture will only be as healthy as the leader. And we'll see you
yep.
next time on the Culture-neer podcast. Terry Gwaltney from the Culture-neer podcast. Listen, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast today. Also want to encourage you to help us get the message out to more people. If you could like, share, and review this content on wherever you consume it, if you go into YouTube or LinkedIn or just whatever your social media channels are, and you could even share it, that would be a big help to us here at the Culture-neer podcast. Also, if you'd like some more information, you can go to www.terrygwaltney.com, where we have updates. We also have more resources. We share articles there. And you also can find our new book there called The Culture-neer. Again, we want to thank you again for taking time just to listen to the podcast or view it on YouTube. It's our goal to spend 20 or 30 minutes each time we're together to help grow your culture to a point where your employees refuse to leave and your customers can't resist. This is Terry. We'll talk to you soon.